Articulation Radio. Articulation.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to another informative and entertaining episode of Articulation Radio. I am your host, the Honorable Walking Man. You know how we do things here at Articulation Radio. We will start off the day's episode by taking a glance at the news headlines, and today's news segment is sponsored by bepublished.org.
These are three of the news headlines and events I saw today, Wednesday, May 25th, 2022, when visiting EliteValuesNews.com on your behalf. Russia's defense ministry says it's opening sea corridors for shipping from 7 Ukrainian ports amid growing international criticism of an unfolding global food crisis. Eli Lilly and Company plans to invest $2.1 billion into 2 new Indiana manufacturing sites, a move that's expected to create hundreds of new jobs in the Hoosier State. And the most recent school shooting confirms that guns are the religion of the right. Many are screaming as calls for gun control and a surety that those with mental health issues and youth will not be able to get guns and go around killing people. Those are three of the news headlines and events I saw when visiting EliteValuesNews.com today on your behalf. As you know, so much happens in this world of ours, and the staff here at Elite Values News makes it a point to keep you abreast of as much as possible. We do report in multiple categories, and we encourage you to head on over within any minute in any hour, and feel free to hit refresh for additional headlines under any category. I am Goddess Sage reporting live. Looking for the latest news? Visit Elite Values News. EliteValuesNews.com has all the latest news and information. Check out the headlines hourly. EliteValuesNews.com. Visit now.
Do you want to be published? Are you looking for a high-quality, low-cost way to be published with a fast turnaround? Visit bepublished.org to publish today. www.bepublished.org. bepublished.org. Publish today. Books, movies, and music. Listeners, we love you, we hear you, and I am the man who's happy to be here with you today on this another nice episode of Articulation Radio. We have a topic that we're going to cover today, so open up your ears. PeopleWarmer.com. Book your travel today. PeopleWarmer.com. Wherever you want to stay. PeopleWarmer.com. Book everything you need. PeopleWarmer.com. Go ahead whenever you please. And if you need advertising, marketing, and promotions, add on an S and head on over to PeopleWarmers.com. That's PeopleWarmers.com.
Why won't they let us live?
Have you always wanted to start a business but can't seem to get it off the ground? Need help building a website? Contact The Conglomerate 972-880-8316 or visit theconglomerate.work. TheConglomerate.work.
ArtistReview.com. All artists need a platform. The Artist Review makes sure you have the one you need to put your work in front of your fans. ArtistReview.com. Artist, REVUE.com.
We kicked off today's episode of Articulation Radio with Little Bluebird by Flojo Mills, and after that, family, you heard Let Us Live by her husband Myron Mills. Now, before I bring on Goddess Sage and have her to share with you some tips, I'm going to play her song next. One of her songs is called You Don't Know, and it has Myron Mills on piano. We're going to play that You Don't Know by Goddess Sage and Myron Mills, and then have Goddess Sage to come on and share some tips for you. And now, of course, the title of today's episode is Help Protect Your Mental Health, because, of course, we will have Goddess Sage to come on and share with you multiple tips. She's going to be sharing with you some figures, some numbers, let you know how those convey over to your mental health. And of course, she'll also be giving you a little bit more info and insight into how you can not only achieve mental health, but also maintain your mental health, and how you can ensure to stave off mental illness, and you can help support other people who are trying to overcome their mental illness. And so, of course, stay tuned, people. We're going to give you some tips and let you know some numbers about how you can help protect your mental health. And we'll talk about how mental health, give you a picture of what's going on all across the board, all across the country, all across the world. So stay tuned, people. Stay tuned. Have more music for you. And of course, we're going to let you know how you can protect your mental health. Hang on tight now.
You are listening to Articulation Radio. Head on over to articulationmedia.club and let us know your thoughts.
Would you like a motivational speaker to come to your company or organization to speak to your group? Visit lifespurposeministries.com. That's lifespurposeministries.com.
Until you've learned the meaning of the blues.
Do you frequently shop online and you're looking for a new place to shop? Join the club, JeffersonTaylor.club, where models, designers, inventors, and other creators offer customers the best products at fair prices. Jefferson Taylor, JeffersonTaylor.club. Join the club. Shop today, JeffersonTaylor.club.
This May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month, the staff here at Articulation Radio would like to take a moment to share with you some of the information we thought would be helpful and insightful that is able to be found at NAMI.org. That's NAMI.org, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI.org. Now, let's dive into some of these statistics here shortly, but as you find on the website for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, it says that millions of people in the United States are affected by mental illness each year. It's important to measure how common mental illness is so we can understand its physical, social, and financial impact so we can show that no one is alone. Now, these numbers are also powerful tools for raising public awareness, stigma busting, and advocating for better health care. So without any further ado, let's get into some of these stats. 1 in 5 United States adults experience mental illness each year. 1 in 20 U.S. adults experience serious mental illness each year. 1 in 6 United States youth aged 6 to 17 years old experience a mental health disorder each year. 50% of all lifetime mental illness begins by age 14, and 75% begins by age 24. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among people aged 10 to 34. You are not alone. No matter what it is you're going through and how it seems like no one in your circle or whom you seem to talk to can seem to understand what you're going through or where you're coming from or see your perspective, just know that you are not alone. 21% of U.S. adults experienced mental illness in 2020. That's 52.9 million people. This represents 1 in 5 adults. 56% of U.S. adults experienced serious mental illness in 2020. That's 14.2 million people, which represents 1 in 20 adults. Now, 16.5% of U.S. youth that are aged 16 to 17 have experienced a mental health disorder in 2016. Now, that's 7.7 million people in 2016. 7.7 million youth aged 6 to 17 have experienced a mental health disorder in the year 2016, 16.5%. But then when you look at 2020, it says 6.7% of U.S. adults experienced a co-occurring substance use disorder and mental illness in 2020. So that means 6.7%, 17 million people in 2020 had a substance use disorder along with their mental illness or their mental health disorder. Now, as far as annual prevalence of mental illness among U.S. adults by demographic group, let's look at that. Let's look at that. Non-Hispanic Asian. And by non-Hispanic, of course, we mean people who do not have any Hispanic background. So let's just call it like it is, because as we know, the only reason why people are saying non-Hispanic, well, we won't even get into that, but we know that's bullshit. But anyway, for Asians, 13.9% as far as the annual prevalence of mental illness among U.S. adults by demographic group. 13.9% of Asians have admitted or been diagnosed to have mental illness. 13.9% of United States Asians. For European Americans or white Americans, that's 22.6%. Have a prevalence of mental illness. 22.6% a prevalence of mental illness among U.S. adults, white adults in America, 22.6%. For the mental illness among U.S. adults that are Black Americans or Aboriginal Americans, they have 17.3%. 17.3% of mental illness among Native Americans, Black Americans, pretty much, because among the Alaskan Native, American Indian, that is Hispanic based, that will be the 18.7%. But of course, for the Aboriginals, the Blacks, that would be 17.3%. And that's the non-Hispanic, Black American, Aboriginal American, 17.3% with a prevalence of mental illness. And for the Hispanic-based American Indian or Native American, Alaska Native, that's 18.7% with mental illness. And then for multiracial, mixed race, that's non-Hispanic, it's 35.8% with an annual prevalence of mental illness. And for the non-Hispanic, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, it's 16.6% annual prevalence of mental illness. So an annual prevalence of mental illness for non-Hispanic, Native Hawaiians or other Pacific Islander, 16.6%, and for the mixed race, multiracial, non-Hispanic, 35.8%. For Hispanic or Latino people, 18.4% annual prevalence of mental illness among U.S. adults, 18.4%. And among the lesbian, gay, or bisexual community, the prevalence of mental illness among U.S. adults is an astounding 47.4%. And that is the highest among these demographic groups. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, 47.4%. Second to that would be the mixed race, multiracial, non-Hispanic at 35.8%. And then the third highest to that would be the 22.6% of the white Americans as far as the prevalence of mental illness. Now, the annual prevalence among U.S. adults by condition. Now, as far as major depressive episodes, it says that 8.4% of all Americans have major depressive episodes, 8.4%. So that's 21 million people. For schizophrenia, it says it's less than 1%, fewer than 1% of American adults are diagnosed with that. So that's an estimated 1.5 million people at the most that would be diagnosed schizophrenic. For bipolar disorder, 2.8%, and that's an estimated 7 million. And as we know, we hear a lot of people always saying someone is schizophrenic or someone's bipolar, diagnosed with anxiety, these different things. But as we see, these numbers are actually very low as far as the people who are actually diagnosed with these and have these true conditions. So for someone who's bipolar disorder, only 2.8% of people are diagnosed with that. Again, an estimated 7 million. For anxiety disorders, 19.1% of people are diagnosed, percent of adults are diagnosed with anxiety disorders, 19.1%. That's an estimated 48 million people. And this is that largest diagnoses that we'll find. Now, for post-traumatic stress disorder, there are 3.6% of American adults who have been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, an estimated 9 million people, and an estimated 3 million people have been diagnosed as obsessive-compulsive, having that obsessive-compulsive disorder. That's 1.2%, that estimated 3 million, 1.2% of all U.S. adults. And then for borderline personality disorder, it says that 1.4% of U.S. adults, that's an estimated 3.5 million people, have been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. So again, you are not alone, because as you see, for any of these, it's millions and millions and millions of people that share any of these struggles. And we want you to realize that and remember that your mental health care does matter. 46.2% of U.S. adults with mental illness received treatment in 2020. Also in 2020, 64.5% of U.S. adults with serious mental illness received treatment. Now, 50.6% of U.S. youth aged 6 to 17 with a mental health disorder received treatment in 2016. The average delay between onset of mental illness symptoms and treatment, sadly, is 11 years. The annual treatment rates among U.S. adults with any mental illness by demographic group usually goes like this. Now, usually about 37.4% of males that need the treatment actually get it. 51.2% of the females with any mental illness actually receive their treatment. For the lesbian, gay, or bisexual community, 54.3% actually receive treatment each year. For non-Hispanic Asians, it's 20.8%. For non-Hispanic white, it is 51.8%. For non-Hispanic Black or African American, the rate is 37. The annual treatment rate among U.S. adults with any mental illness is 31.7%. I'm sorry, 37.1%. My apology on that, 37.1%. And for non-Hispanic or mixed race, multiracial adults in the U.S., 43% of them receive treatment for any mental illness. And for Hispanic or Latino adults, it's 35%, 35.1%. And 11% of U.S. adults with mental illness had no insurance coverage in 2020. And 11.3% of U.S. adults with serious mental illness had no insurance coverage in 2020. Now, 150 million people live in a designated mental health professional shortage area, which helps us kind of understand a bit more why fewer and fewer people, why not as many people are receiving the treatment as are diagnosed with these disorders, although we would imagine that the doctors, the same ones who can diagnose you as disabled or mentally ill, would be the same one who could subscribe some treatment for you or get you entered into a program. But of course, as we found, 150 million people live in a designated mental health professional shortage area. So the professionals are simply not there. So if you know any young people who you think would be great for this industry, whether it's they're people who are already naturally givers or people who do community work or people who have that care for people or that counseling, encourage them to go into the field of mental health so that they can in some capacity be in a position to help others. Now, as we know, there is a ripple effect of mental illness. We'll talk about that. Let's talk about the ripple effect on the person, the family, the community, the world. But let's come back to that. Let's first talk real quick about suicide, okay? Because it is okay to talk about suicide. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among people aged 10 to 34 in the U.S. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the U.S. The overall suicide rate in the United States has increased by 35% since 1999. That's atrocious. 46% of the people who die by suicide had a diagnosed mental health condition. 90% of the people who die by suicide had shown symptoms of a mental health condition, according to interviews with family, friends, and medical professionals. Lesbians, gays, and bisexual youth are usually 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than straight youth are. 78% of the people who die by suicide are males. Transgender adults are nearly 12 times more likely to attempt suicide than the general population. The annual prevalence of serious thoughts of suicide by the U.S. demographic group goes something like this. 4.9% of all adults have serious thoughts of suicide. When it comes to young adults aged 18 to 25, it's 11.3%. Of high school students, 18.8%. Of LGBTQ youth, 42%. Of LGBTQ youth who identify as transgender or non-binary, 52%. So if you or someone you know is in an emergency, please right now call 911. Or you can always call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-272-8255. That's 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-TALK. That number again to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255. 800-273-8255. 273-TALK or call 911 immediately. Now let's dive back here real quick on the ripple effects of mental illness. For the person, people with depression have a 40% higher risk of developing cardiovascular and metabolic diseases than the general population. People with serious mental health issues are nearly twice as likely to develop these conditions. Now, 32.1% of U.S. adults with mental illness also experienced a substance use disorder in 2020. 17 million individuals, people. The rate of unemployment is higher among U.S. adults who have mental illness, 6.4%, compared to those who do not have a mental illness, 5.1% of unemployment. Now, high school students with significant symptoms of depression are more than twice as likely to drop out of high school compared to their peers. Students aged 6 to 17 with mental, emotional, or behavioral concerns are 3 times more likely to repeat a grade. Now, here are some of the ramifications on the family, some of the ripple effects on the family and the community and the world. Now, on the family, at least 8.4 million people in the United States provide care to an adult who has a mental illness or an emotional health issue. Caregivers of adults with mental or emotional health issues spend an average of 32 hours per week providing unpaid care and often being unappreciated and being mistreated. 32 hours per week. Unacceptable. For the community, mental illness and substance use disorders are involved in 1 out of every 8 emergency department visits by a U.S. adult. An estimated 12 million visits are all because of substance use disorders coupled with mental illness. So again, mental illness and substance use disorders are involved in 1 out of every 8 emergency department visits. 12 million visits. Mood disorders are the most common cause of hospitalization for all people in the United States that are under age 45. Mood disorders are the most common cause of hospitalization for all people in the United States under age 45. And that's after excluding hospitalization related to pregnancy and birth. Mood disorders. So people not knowing how to self-regulate, not controlling themselves, acting any kind of way anywhere, most common cause of hospitalization for all people in the U.S. under 45. Now, across the U.S. economy, serious mental illness causes $193.2 billion in lost earnings every year. Across the U.S. economy, serious mental illness causes $193.2 billion with a B in lost earnings each year. 20.8% of people experiencing homelessness in the United States have a serious mental health condition. 37% of adults incarcerated in the state and federal prison system have a diagnosed mental illness. 70% of youth in the juvenile justice system have a diagnosable mental health condition. 8.4% of active component service members in the U.S. military experienced a mental health or substance use condition in 2019. 15.3% of U.S. veterans experienced a mental illness in 2019. That's 31.3 million people. Regarding the world and this ripple effect, depression and anxiety disorders cost the global economy $1 trillion in lost productivity each year. Depression is a leading cause of disability worldwide. Depression is a leading cause of disability worldwide. People, 2020 was such a traumatic year. Let me tell you all about just the mental health by the numbers just for 2020, recognizing the impact of COVID-19 and this forced isolation. 1 in 15 U.S. adults experienced both a substance use disorder and mental illness in 2020. More than 12 million U.S. adults had serious thoughts of suicide. More than 12 million had serious thoughts of suicide in 2020. 1 in 5 U.S. adults report that the pandemic had a significant negative impact on their mental health. 1 in 5 U.S. adults reported that the pandemic had a significant negative impact on their mental health. 45% of those with mental illnesses. 55% of those with serious mental illness. Among people aged 12 and older who drink alcohol, 15% reported increased drinking. Among those 12 and older who use drugs, 10% reported increased use. Among U.S. adults who received mental health services, 17.7 million experienced delays or cancellations in appointments. 7.3 million experienced delays in getting prescriptions. 4.9 million were unable to access needed care. 26.3 million received virtual mental health services in the past year. 34% of those with mental illness, 50% of those with serious mental illnesses, and for youth and young adults. Among the U.S. adolescents, and we're still talking about just 2020 now, among the U.S. adolescents, those are those aged 12 to 17, 1 in 6 experienced major depressive episodes. 3 million had serious thoughts of suicide. 31% had an increase in mental health related emergency department visits. Among U.S. young adults, those aged 18 to 25, 1 in 3 experienced a mental illness. 1 in 10 experienced a serious mental illness. 3.8 million had serious thoughts of suicide. 1 in 5 young people report that the pandemic had a significant negative impact on their mental health. 18% of adolescents, 23% of young adults, and nearly half of the young people with mental health concerns report a significant negative impact. 1 in 10 people under 18 experience a mental health condition following a COVID-19 diagnosis. Increased use of alcohol among those who drink went up all the way. 15% of adolescents, 18% of young adults. There was also increased use of drugs among those who use. 15% of adolescents, 19% of young adults. Now, when we take the time to look at mental illness and the criminal justice system, we find out that for communities, for instance, 70% of youth in the juvenile justice system have a diagnosable mental health condition. Youth in detention are 10 times more likely to suffer from psychosis than youth in the community. About 50,000 veterans are held in local jails. That's 55% report experiencing a mental illness. Among incarcerated people with a mental health condition, non-white individuals are more likely to go to solitary confinement, be injured, and stay longer in jail. And when it comes down to the criminal justice system, period, about 2 million times each year, people with serious mental illness are booked into jails. About 2 in 5 people are incarcerated because of a history of mental illness. 37% in state and federal prisons, and 44% are held in local jails. 66% of women in prison reported having a history of mental illness, almost twice the percentage of men in prison. Nearly 1 in 4 people shot and killed by police officers between 2015 and 2020 had a mental health condition. 1 in 4, that's 25%, had a mental health condition. Suicide is the leading cause of death for people held in local jails. Believe it or not, suicide is the leading cause of death for people held in local jails. An estimated 4,000 people with serious mental illness are held in solitary confinement inside U.S. prisons right now. And as far as access to care, people, this has been hard. For access to care, about 3 in 5 people, 63%, with a history of mental illness do not receive mental health treatment while incarcerated in state and federal prisons. And we wonder why people go in and come out worse while there is no rehabilitation, no help, my apology. About 3 in 5 people, 63%, with a history of mental illness do not receive mental health treatment while incarcerated in state and federal prisons. Less than half of people with a history of mental illness receive mental health treatment while held in local jails. That's 45% of them. Less than half of the people, 45%, with a history of mental illness receive mental health treatment while held in local jails. And people who have health care coverage upon release from incarceration are more likely to engage in services that reduce recidivism. So everyone should have health care coverage upon release from incarceration, because as we know, people who have health care coverage upon release from incarceration are more likely to engage in services that reduce recidivism. And that's what we need. We need people to get the assistance they need, to be able to grow like they need, to get the strength that they need, to be able to navigate this life as best they need, so that they can overcome these mental health struggles and they can get their physical, social, financial, everything, emotional, get everything back the way it should be or on the point that it should have been in the first place, especially for those who have had a life that was so rough to where they've never had it good. So people, while we are raising the public awareness and we're doing this stigma busting and we're advocating for better health and better mental health, let's make it a point to not only understand the numbers, to know the numbers, but to make sure that we let people know that they are not alone. And again, if you or anyone you know is currently in a crisis right now, or would just like to have someone to talk to, or even if you, well, number one, if you are in an emergency, call 911 immediately. If you or someone you know is in an emergency, call 911. But if you or anyone you know are having thoughts of suicide, please call the National Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-TALK. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Thank you all so much, and we definitely look forward to your life being better and being able to support all the greatness that is within us each. Back to you, Joaquin, man. This is Goddess Sage giving you that mental health by the numbers.
For the first time in years, got my feet crossed the border from a land of tears. Ain't no way I'm going back under. Got my eyes in the wild blue yonder. Will lights be on the horizon? Let's go find out. Feeling free to live my life, free to roll the dice.
just heard Feeling Free by Jesse Lawrence featuring Lakeisha Nugent. Up next is It's Alright by Reverend Barry and the Funk, followed by Your Mind by the Furthermores featuring Vincent Vega. But first, I'm going to play for you Jesse's Theme by Rachel Ann Cox.
If you'd like more information on how you can be an eyelash artist, call us at 314-560-1641 or 888-585-LASH, lashingoutloudinc.com.
Media Room 360 TV. Media Room 360 TV is a channel that has something for everyone, from world news, inspiration, programming for kids, politics, sports, technology, and entertainment. Media Room 360 TV has got you covered. Check out one of our shows today on Roku. Media Room 360 Internet Television on Roku. And if you need a speaker, head over to Media Room 360 Speakers at MediaRoom360.com. That's MediaRoom360.com.
Articulation Radio, thanks you so much for listening. So head on over right now to articulationmedia.club and let us know your thoughts on today's episode. In the meantime, we're going to keep the show rolling for you.
Are you looking for grant writers, technical writers, creative writers, academic writers, any kind of writers? Head to the Writers Consortium. Their website, writersconsortium.us, www.writersconsortium.us, the Writers Consortium, writersconsortium.us, for all of your writing needs. Think of it, they can produce it for you. They are the ghost writers to the top people.
If you are a savvy senior who's seeking a lifestyle club that's centered around you, visit sittingroom.xyz today. The Sitting Room, sittingroom.xyz, where savvy seniors socialize, get event invites, organize among themselves, as well as obtain merchandise and get engaged to create new things. The Sitting Room, sittingroom.xyz. Visit today.
Weddings are expensive, but your love is worth it. Go to marryusnow.us to book the Minister of Love to officiate your wedding today. The fee is only $200 if your wedding is in the city of Chicago, and there's only a small fee to get the Minister of Love to travel outside of Chicago to your wedding location. Book the Minister of Love today. Visit marryusnow.us. That's marryusnow.us.
You will be mine. Honestly, I'm out of words. Yeah. It started with liquors and beers. Now there's something different here. I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna hold you every night. Hold you. I wanna kiss you when you cry. I wanna kiss you when you cry. I wanna tell the world you're mine. You're mine. Fingertips, they sure don't hurt. When I'm losing track of time, baby, I don't mind. Honestly, you're something else. You're making it better for me. With love and the things you teach me. You're making it better for me. You don't do another DB. I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna hold you every night. Hold you. I wanna kiss you when you cry. I wanna kiss you when you cry. I wanna tell the world you're mine. You're mine. You're mine. I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna hold you every night. I wanna kiss you when you cry. I wanna kiss you when you cry. I wanna tell the world you're mine. You're mine. You're take you for a ride. I wanna hold you every night. Hold you. I wanna kiss you when you cry. I wanna kiss you when you cry. I wanna tell the world you're mine. You're mine. You're mine.
Want to buy stocks, jewels, real estate, or other high-end items? Would you love to be able to contribute to charitable initiatives but cannot do these things with the money you currently have? Join Regal City Investment and Social Club, where you can pool money each month with other investors to make major purchases, give to the needy, and possibly turn a profit. www.regalcity.xyz. Become a Regal citizen today by joining Regal City Investment and Social Club. regalcity.xyz.
My people, my fam, my folks, I thank you so much. We all here at Articulation Radio, thank you so much for tuning in today and making us a part of what it is that you do. We encourage you to go over to our website, articulationmedia.club, and let us know not only what you think about today's episode, but make sure that your music, your interview, and your ad all take place right here on this station, Articulation Radio. Go to articulationmedia.club right now and hook yourself up. Make sure that you do that so you can hook other people up. But be sure to tune in again on Articulation Radio. We'll catch you again soon. And in the meantime, you already know, keep being a doer, keep being a move maker, and keep making things happen.
Articulation. Articulation.